So we have a sales interview coming up. One of the biggest challenges is trying to anticipate what questions will be asked of you and how to effectively answer them. I get this message often, either through text messages, DMs, or even a phone call. Hey, Anthony, I'm interviewing for XYZ company. I'm in the final stages or early stages of the interview process. Can you prep with me? Can you give me some advice? What should I anticipate to be asked? Now, let me be clear here. Every hiring manager and every sales manager has their own interview form that they go through, has their own information that they're looking to ask. Now, you can search online and you can find blogs and HR articles that talk about how to prepare for an interview and what questions to answer or what questions to expect and how to answer them. And what I have found is many of these articles or many of these blogs are written by HR professionals, which, don't get me wrong, an HR professional is great at going through the legalities of building an organization. They're great at checking all the boxes, crossing the T's, dotting the I's, making sure everything checks off before you hire somebody. However, they're typically not the major decision maker. And the reason being is they're in HR, they're not in sales management. They're in HR, they're not in revenue production. Those are things that sales professionals do. And only a sales manager is going to be the person that's going to be your biggest advocate, or is going to be the one that's going to say, no, you're not the right fit. So it's impossible to anticipate what questions are going to come without doing some research ahead of time from people who know that hiring manager. And that takes a little bit of grit, navigating and social networking on LinkedIn, making phone calls to existing employees on the team, and we can walk through all those steps at a later date. But the problem I'm going to deliver here today is there's two questions that I feel everyone should know how to answer and are often not answered correctly. And these are questions that I ask in my own interview process. Question number one: walk me through the greatest adversity you've ever overcome. Now, when I'm asking a candidate this question, I'm typically looking for this candidate to display their ability to deal with adversity. I'm looking for them to display a level of grit. I'll even go a little bit further when I ask this question, and I'll tell a candidate, you can explain something to me professional or personal. It's essentially whatever you feel comfortable with sharing with me. The reason I give that opening to a candidate is I'm kind of encouraging them to share something that's going to rock my world. Because if the greatest adversity you've ever overcome is not hitting quota at your last sales job, if the greatest adversity you've ever overcome is having a customer tell you no and having one bad sales day, one bad sales week, one bad sales month, in my opinion, you're probably not going to make it past the interview process for me. Reason being is the people who do find a way to share a story of adversity and apply it to business. This is this one moment that you can wow the interview panel by showing what you've overcome to who you are today. Now, I won't share some of the stories of adversity that have been shared to me out of respect for people who've interviewed with me, out of respect for people who are on my team, but I will share some of the stories that I have shared personally when I have been asked this question. For example, when I interviewed for a position in sales leadership, I shared the most challenging adversity that I had ever gone through in life, and at this time, it was true, was I had to make a decision to terminate end-of-life care for my father. Now, that's a really morbid discussion, and it's typically something that you can say, and if you don't tell the story correctly, it could change the mood, it can change the demeanor. With all honesty, it's really personal to me, and I don't share it with many people. If you've read the Catapulting Commission's book, I shared the story in there, but to have the conversation one-on-one, I typically don't talk about it. But in the interview process, I shared it, and here is why. I wanted to demonstrate how that would attribute or correlate to my skills as a sales leader. And here's what I said. I said the most challenging adversity I've ever come through was having to make the decision to terminate end-of-life care for my father. You see, with all honesty, At the time, there was nobody there to make a decision. I was my father's next of kin, and I had multiple conversations with the medical staff about what to do. Here's what I knew. I knew I had to make a decision. I knew I had to make a decision fast, and I knew the decision wasn't going to be easy. At the end of the day, I evaluated the pros and cons. I looked at all the risks. I thought for a minute, I gathered my thoughts, and I made a decision, and I didn't second guess my decision. And the reason I share that story with you, Mr. Interviewer, is I believe a position in sales leadership requires some of those same traits. You have to be able to make difficult decisions. You have to make difficult decisions fast. And with all honesty, when you make a decision, if you're second guessing if you've made the right decision, you're never going to be able to move forward. And so I attributed that adversity and what I learned from that adversity to the role I was interviewing for at that time. So I'm going to challenge you. Find an adversity story that you can share that can show your level to overcome adversity and how that will apply to your new career in sales. That's the first question that's going to be asked of you, and how to answer it like the pros, how to answer it to show you're ready for the job. Don't answer it with a very weak adversity story, because you won't move on in the interview process. Weak adversity stories. I sprained my ankle before a homecoming game in high school. Weak adversity stories. I missed quota the last fiscal month of the calendar year, and I didn't make it a President's Club, and I was really, really disappointed, and I was embarrassed when I came to my next sales meeting. That's not adversity, all right? Something that's going to shock the interviewer and then relate that story to the job you're applying for. The second question is a two-part question. Part one, give me your definition of street smarts. Now, when I ask someone to give me their definition of street smarts, most people have a similar answer, and we're just going to share it point blank. It's some level of situational awareness, emotional intelligence, knowing your surroundings. I've asked this question for years, and I've probably asked at least over 1,000 people this question. And it's always the same answer. Everyone has the same story. That's pretty simple. Here's where people mess up. After that question's asked, I follow that up by simply saying, can you give me an example of when you were street smart in business? This is your time and opportunity to demonstrate a heightened level of emotional intelligence and tell a story when you made a decision independently of your sales manager, independently of your regional director, independently of your colleagues or coworkers. What I want to hear is you're capable of making a decision on your own, analyzing the situations around you, analyzing the scenario around you. So street smarts, a simple way to answer that question is follow SAR, S-A-R, situation, action, result. So if I'm gonna give an example of being street smart, you can tell a story of being in a position with your prospect, realizing your prospect was not really giving you a clear objection. So your situation is this. I sat down with my prospect. I was selling him my bookkeeping service. He was an auto mechanic. As I was walking through this, I realized he didn't have a lot of questions. And because he didn't have a lot of questions, I could tell that we weren't connecting there. Maybe he wasn't fully understanding. So I paused for a second, and here's the action I took. I point blank said to him, is any of this making sense to you, or is this kind of going over your head? Because I got to be honest with you, it kind of goes over my head at times. And my prospect paused and looked at me with a sigh of relief and simply said, yeah, actually it is. I'm a great auto mechanic. I'm not really good at the bookkeeping and finances. I know I have to get it in place. My CPA and my attorney all said I need to find an external bookkeeper. Your company offers that service. So, but I don't really understand everything. And, it's kind of muddled to me. And so I followed that conversation by simply saying, if you're only making a decision based on price today, I got to be honest with you, I'm not going to hit that. But I can spend some extra time and help simplify this and take away the sales spiel and truly educate you on why you should have a bookkeeping services. Would that be a benefit? My prospect took a step back and was like, absolutely. The result of that story was at the end, he ended up signing with me, signing a long-term commitment. He's one of my most loyal clients to this day. Do you see what I just did there? Situation, action, results. And I demonstrated street smarts by being one-on-one and acknowledging that my prospect typically wasn't listening. Now, there's a lot of scenarios you can use to identify street smarts: prospecting, cold calling, closing, rapport building, team building, you name it. Find the story that you can use to demonstrate your ability to be street smarts and articulate it in a matter of situation, action, result. Keep it brief, but keep it thorough. Kind of oxymoron. I get it. But if your answer is so long-winded that the interviewer is thinking about the next question and no longer listening to your answer, you've lost them. Remember that. That's what I got for you guys this week. Sales interviews are challenging for everyone. Everyone has their own methodology. Everyone has their own questions. If you are in a position where you're interviewing for a sales job, reach out to me. I'd love to share with you, pick your brain. Essentially, that's my passion. I enjoy helping people achieve greater results than they anticipate. I enjoy people breaking into this wonderful industry of highly compensated sales professionals. I'm Anthony Garcia. Do me a favor, like, subscribe, comment. I will appreciate and share back. I'll see you guys next week.